Hi students, for today's lesson, I will be discussing about the different genres of fiction. So what is a genre? A genre can be determined based on various things such as manuscript length, character types, settings, themes, viewpoint choices, plots, and even the tone and the mood created by the writer. Also, certain settings suit specific genres. These will vary in type, details, intensity, and length of description. Why is it important to know the genre of a literary piece? First, genres fulfill readers' expectations. We purchase certain books since we have appreciated comparative stories previously. As readers, we will be able to determine what genre is best for us to read. Also, genres set as models for writers on which to base their stories. Most of the time, writers have their genre of expertise, while others are good in writing all types of genres. Whichever the case, determining a genre before they begin writing will help journalists set a goal on what to achieve in their written work. And lastly, genres can help satisfy our human requirement for classic narrating. We as readers sometimes need stories we can depend on to dull the unforgiving real factors of life. There are stories we enjoy reading because we appreciate how they are creatively narrated. Now let me give you some common types of fictional genres. This includes fantasy, historical fiction, science fiction, mystery fiction, realistic fiction, and horror. Fantasy is a story that is imaginative but could never really happen. The setting may be of another world. Characters in a fantasy might be magical like talking animals, sorceries, witches, and wizardry. It is a genre of imaginative fiction involving magic and adventure, especially in a setting other than the real world. Fantasy has different elements, and the first one is magic. Magic is often associated with learning with complex books and rituals. In great books, magic takes many forms. For example, the apprentice wizards in Harry Potter duel with wands. In C.S. Lewis's Narnia series, a witch casts a spell over the kingdom of Narnia, plunging it into eternal winter. The second element of fantasy is adventure. Adventure in fantasy often features another meaning of magic, a quality of being beautiful and delightful in a way that seems remote from daily life. Adventure means an unusual and exciting or daring experience, as well as excitement associated with danger or the taking of risks, which is very common in fantasy stories. Element number 3 is struggle for mystery. Themes of struggle and mystery are found in many forms throughout many fantasy novels. The process of struggle and mystery is often shown in character development. Sometimes, characters use power irresponsibly. Struggle in fantasy fiction includes struggle for mystery of self, understanding and using one's own power effectively or wisely, and also the conflict between those who use their own magical mystery for positive, destructive ends. And the last element of fantasy is setting. Because of its exploration of the otherworldly and the supernatural, place is a key aspect of many fantasy novels. Some places are created through magic, just like Wonderland or Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. In fantasy, we often strongly experience both characters' effects on their world and their world's effect and influence on them. Some literary pieces under the fantasy genre includes the following: J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games, The Tale of Peter Rabbit, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Harry Potter, Alice in Wonderland, and The Maze Runner by James Dashner. The second genre of fiction is historical fiction. This genre takes place in a historically accurate time and setting. The characters and some events are fictional. Historical fiction also has different elements, and the first one is character. Whether real or imagined, characters behave in keeping with the era they inhabit, even if they push the boundaries. And that means discovering the norms, attitudes, beliefs, and expectations of their time and station in life. The second element of historical fiction is dialogue. The language of the characters is very significant in historical fiction because it tells the readers in which era and community the characters belong. The third element is setting. More than 75% of participants in a survey selected to bring the past to life as the primary reason for reading historical fiction. And that's the job of a writer. They need to transport the readers into the past. Element number 4 is plot. The plot has to make sense for the time period, and plot will often be shaped around or by the historical events taking place at that time. This is particularly true when writing about famous historical figures. When considering those historical events, remember that you are telling a story, not writing history. And the last element is conflict. The problems faced by the characters in your story. As with theme and plot, conflict must be realistic for the chosen time and place. Readers will want to understand the reasons for the conflicts you have presented. Here are some of the literary pieces under historical fiction genre. War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, an epic masterpiece depicting the French invasion of Russia during the Napoleonic era. Another iconic book is Memoirs of a Geisha, written by Arthur Golden. It is a fictional memoir of a geisha from age 9 to adulthood in pre- and post-World War II Japan. Another popular book is The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is a Gothic novel that inspired a flood of tourists to Paris' most famous cathedral. Some popular Filipino historical fictions include Luha at Dugo, written by Maximo B. Sevilla, and Gapo, written by Luwalhati Bautista. Science fiction is a story that is typically set in the future or on other planets. It is based on the impact of actual imagined or potential science. It provides a mental picture of something that may happen on realistic scientific principles and facts. It is often called sci-fi. It relies heavily on scientific facts, theories, and principles as support for its settings, characters, themes, plot lines, which is what make it different from fantasy. What is the importance of science fiction? Many times, science fiction turns real scientific theories into full stories about what is possible and imaginable. One is to suggest what could really happen in the future. Second is to explore what could happen if certain events or circumstances came to be. Or suggest consequences of technological and scientific advancements and innovation. Here are some popular science fiction stories: The Avengers, Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley, Planet of the Apes, and The Matrix. The next one is mystery fiction. Mystery is a genre of literature whose stories focus on a puzzling crime, situation, or circumstance that needs to be solved. Mysteries began to gain popularity in the Victorian era, mostly in the form of Gothic literature, which was primarily for women. Since then, it has developed in both form and reach and has become a widely read genre among male and female readers of all ages. Mysteries are important because they feature topics that are usually both fascinating and troubling to the human mind. Unsolved crimes, unexplained questions and events in natural and human history, supernatural curiosities, and so on. Here are some of the literary pieces under mystery fiction genre. One of the most popular is Sherlock Holmes. Another is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. Realistic fiction is a story that seems real or could happen in real life. It is set in present day and includes modern day problems and events. This type of fiction is what many readers can relate to because these talk about stories that could happen in real life. The characteristics of realistic fiction are the following. Realistic fiction stories tend to take place in the present or recent past. Characters are involved in events that could happen. Characters live in places that could be or are actually real. The characters seem like real people, with real issues solved in a realistic way. And the events portrayed in realistic fiction conjure questions that a reader could face in everyday life. Some of the literary pieces under realistic fiction include The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, Diary of a Wimpy Kid by Jeff Kinney, Nicholas Sparks' very famous novel A Walk to Remember. The last and also a popular genre is horror. The horror genre in literature dates back to ancient Greece and ancient Rome, where the horror stories explored themes related to death, demons, evil spirits, and the afterlife. Modern horror novels have expanded the genre to include new elements and contemporary themes like serial killers and slasher stories, as well as genre mashups that combine horror with historical fantasy and modern interpretations of fantastical creatures like ghosts, vampires, werewolves, and witches. Here are some popular classic horror stories: Frankenstein, Dracula, and The Shining. Modern-day horror stories include The Conjuring, It, and Insidious. Other fictional genres also include adventures and folktales. Adventure is a story where a protagonist and other major characters are placed in dangerous situations. The characters must use their wit and skills to defeat the antagonist. And folktales include stories like fables, fairy tales, legends, tall tales, and myth. And we're done. I hope you learned something from this lecture. Again, as a review, some common fictional genres include fantasy, historical fiction, mystery fiction, realistic fiction, science fiction, and horror, while other genres may include adventures and folktales. Thank you very much for watching. Again, this is your teacher, Ma'am Nich. You may now answer the activities in your worksheets. See you next time!